This year is going to be big when it comes to superhero showdowns. Marvel is going to have the Avengers clash in Captain America Civil War later this year, and Batman is going to be fighting Superman in Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, which comes out this Friday in the US. It's certainly a good year to be a superhero fan, and with the trailer showing a very familiar villain, I thought it would be appropriate to do a game review for the death and return of Superman. Back in the comics, DC was brave enough to kill Jason Todd, the second Robin, and decided to make Superman relevant again by having him meet his end fighting Doomsday, a Kryptonian monster in Superman number 75. The storyline continued in Funeral for a Friend, then into Reign of the Supermen, which would eventually lead to Superman's return to life. A scrolling beat-em-up was made by Sunsoft and Blizzard, overviewing those events, and was released for the Super NES in 1994, and for the Sega Genesis in 1995. In this game, you play as one of the 5 Supermen as you face hordes of enemies, similar to games like Final Fight and Maximum Carnage. Graphically, it's standard for the time. It's not the best-looking game of its kind, but everything is well detailed. Whether it's the streets of Metropolis, the ruins of Coast City, or inside Engine City, the backgrounds are unique in each level. Of course, the Daily Planet already knows who Doomsday is. Gameplay for the most part is like any other beat-em-up, and that's not a bad thing. You could say it's a downside that it's only a one-player game, but who would be Superman's player 2? Red Superman like in the old arcade game? Added in is Superman's eye lasers, and a super ground pound that knocks out all enemies. You have your standard jumping attack, and if you press jump twice, you can float around, which helps for airborne enemies. You can also pick up your foes and throw them. The most fun I had was throwing enemies into the wall. Take that, you ugly goat thing. The enemies do learn to get cheap in later stages, making the difficulty ramp very sudden. Why, you cheap... Arrgh! The game briefly follows the story from the comics and is told in news reports. Any cutscenes are told next to still images. If you never read the comics, you'll be scratching your head wondering how certain events took place. They even skip showing the Justice League of America's battle with Doomsday in favor of Superman fighting a bunch of punks with chainsaws and Molotov cocktails. And that kinda ticked me off. If Superman can die facing these ruffians, then it must have been really easy for Doomsday to kill him. Also, the image of Superman dying in Lois Lane's arms is rather censored from the bruised and bloodied body from the comics. They also completely skip the Funeral for a Friend story and go right into Reign of the Supermen. 4 Supermen appear, all claiming to be Superman. Cyborg Superman, the Eradicator, also known as the last son of Krypton, Superboy, and the Man of Steel, who was later just called Steel. All come to defend Metropolis. Or do they? You don't get to choose who you play as since the story has to be told. And to mix things up, there are scrolling shoot-em-up levels, and they certainly are fun since they are rather easy. Each of the Supermen attack in their own way, and it's cool to see what each one brings to the table. Plus, they have different super attacks as well. Going with the story in the comics, spoiler alert guys, Cyborg Superman turns evil, captures Superboy and the Eradicator, whom later escape, and the real Superman returns, sporting a black costume and a mullet. He's depowered, of course, and the Eradicator sacrifices himself, saving the real Superman and giving him his powers back. You go through the final stage as Superman, and like all final stages, it's controller-smashing, rage-inducing madness before facing and destroying the cyborg Superman, bringing the tale to a close. Now, the Sega Genesis, or Mega Drive for you folks outside of the US, version was released a year later, and it doesn't quite have the same polish as the Super NES version. The music and sound effects suffer, and they're sometimes ear-piercing. Also, the color palettes aren't the same, and you end up with sprites sharing colors when they shouldn't. On the plus side, they did make the screen seem bigger, so you have more room to see things around you. which is helpful when searching for hidden power-ups. Now, I'm not saying which console is better here, but I recommend the Super NES version of this game if you play it. Overall, the game is decent. If you're a Superman fan, this is a must-play. But you only really need to go through the game once. There's no replayability, and the difficulty curve gets harder as you progress. It's only a one-player game, so it's not as fun as Double Dragon, and cutscenes feel cheap even for a game of the time. Personally, I say go read the comics first, which will help you appreciate the story, and then play this game over the weekend. Just be warned that I will not pay for anyone's broken controllers if you rage quit. So I hope you've enjoyed this game review. If so, thumbs up and comment below. Also, don't forget to subscribe and check out my other videos. I have a lot of things planned, such as my first reaction video for Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, which I'll put up promptly after seeing it in the movies. And as always, until next time.